Well, hello and welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here with my co-host and colleague, Jim Gurley. And, full transparency, Jim, we had a good pregame. It's the day after the presidential election, and Donald Trump is our new president for the second time. And so many thoughts, but I think in the context of and to your point, we couldn't really avoid talking about it, and it's fraught with opportunities to go all kinds of different which ways. And but to relate it to our foundational framework, which is our flywheel, the center of which is our self or our ego. And I think this is to your point, really a self-awareness, self-reflection podcast, which really dials in nicely to our framework. And then just to remind everybody that might not be familiar with the framework, it's a circle if you picture it, and five areas around the circle emanating from the self in the center, which are in no particular order: our relationship with money, our relationship with people, our physical and mental health, our career, and then I guess the end all be all of today's is our worldview. And so, Jim, it's interesting when we first connected this morning after being up for a while and staying up a little late and maybe even having spoken to some people and read some shit or heard some shit. We came at it from a slightly different perspective, even though we have similar worldviews. So that's my intro. Let me throw it over to you. You had some interesting definitions and thoughts.
Yeah, well, like you said, Mark, it definitely last night it was a turning point for our country, for our lives, and well, anytime you have a big event, we were talking in our pregame was I was just it's a time for reflection. Whether you take a defeat or you take a victory, I think the next day I'm obviously talking about my rugby career, even in business and things. When you have a big event, you know that the outcome of that event is going to change the course of your life. And what happened last night doesn't matter whether you're on the red team or the blue team, but the course of our politics in the United States of America has shifted to the left. Excuse me, from the left to the right. And but I guess it's not a time for certainly not to gloat or to celebrate. I think it's a time to reflect. So yeah, let's break this down. I've got a few things I'd like to start off with, and we talk about this, all the time. Is gratitude. I have a feeling of gratitude that we have a system. It's not a perfect system, but we live in a country that your vote does matter, and you can change the outcome and the direction of something if you really feel strongly about it. So I'm very pleased that there was engagement from a lot of different types of people, maybe that hadn't voted before, and we can break all that down later. But gratitude, yeah, I'm grateful to be an American, that we live in a system that really can make change very very quickly in the scope of things. But another thing, we every time we talk about politics, I think we have to keep it in perspective. We have our world politics, we have our national, which last night was obviously for the red team. Then we have our state, our local, that's our county, and our city. So just to give you an idea of the change that's going to really affect where I live and this place, and how much this has changed is at the state level, we passed a proposition for crime under $900, which has caused a huge amount of crime and problems, right? That passed, I think it's close to an 80% favor. So that's a really good sign, even in a liberal state like California, that we realize that's not good. You can't have people committing crimes like that. So that I find that very encouraging at the state level, among a number of other things, rent control, some other things. Passed that one time would be considered the right side of that issue. On the county level, we threw out a DA that was just completely radical for the Alameda County. So close to 80% favor to recall her. So she'll be gone. And at the city level, listen, I don't live in Oakland, but I was born in the city of Oakland, along with Kamala Harris, by the way. Like I told you, my claim to fame in life is that her and I were born in the same hospital, according to my mom, because my mom was a labor and delivery nurse, the same room. 9 months apart in Oakland, California. But the city, the mayor was was recalled. So that's the stuff that we'll see change the course of a direction. I think everybody, no matter what level you're at, was not good. Crime, homelessness, all these different things. So again, a time for reflection. And then, yeah, we'll get into kind of I think we can break this down in an objective way, not a political way, of how the how the blue team lost. They took a major defeat last night, and we don't say this in a bragging or a celebration, but it's time you got to listen to the crowd, and it's time for reflection of what this means. So.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of interesting thoughts. One of the things is we collectively lost 4 years ago, so I remember what that feels like,
Uh-huh.
and I'm not, like you said, I'm not interested in gloating or jumping up and down or screaming to the rafters. But I think one of the interesting things in the pregame was that you and I, even though we have similar worldviews and even similar backgrounds, like dads, entrepreneurs, athletes, um, we came at this from a couple different perspectives. Mine was uncertainty. Like I don't know what's going to happen now. Oh my gosh, the world just, or the country just flipped upside down, and what's going to happen next? And your position was, oh my gosh, this is so clear to me. This is such clarity. The system worked, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this is what's going to happen. And it's like fascinating to me that I was like, the whole thing's up in the air right now, and you're like the opposite, dude. I don't think that's the case at all. And maybe we can reflect on that, because I don't think it's a right wrong thing. I just found it interesting.
Yeah, I think that to your point, Mark, there's no immediate change. Our lives don't change at all today. Maybe tomorrow, the next day, things will start to take shape, and then over time, this will change. So I think we were saying the same thing. It's just the immediate impact is minimal, and this will happen over a number of years. And like you said, 4 years, because 4 years ago, if you were on the red team, you took a defeat, and it was time to sit to reflect, regroup, and then come back and wow, look at the outcome. So a couple of quotes I want to just kind of set the stage with, I think, and some of these quotes I just listened to this morning. So I'm quoting a Democratic analyst, right, that said some things, and they grabbed me, and I'd like to get your response on them. And these are random. There's a couple of them I've had for years and some not. But yeah, the Biden-Harris Democratic Party took a major defeat last night. So he was talking about the Biden-Harris, the Democratic Party, the group. They took a defeat, and then the next quote was, "We have entered a new political dawn." I thought that was a good one, because we have, right? We're entering a new political dawn, and so
Yeah, I
what's your
think that.
response to that one? Yeah.
Well, interesting. I agree with you. It is a new political dawn, a new
By the
political.
way, this is not me speaking. These are quotes, right?
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. Yeah. No, and I think that's great. The thing that struck me initially was the Biden Harris party.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they move this guy Biden in and out of the party when they so choose.
Yeah.
Like, he belongs in this conversation, but not that conversation. It's like, who's running the fucking country, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what struck me was, is it the Harris Democratic Party, the Biden Harris, the Biden party? I mean, just that alone would lead me to believe there's no leadership in that party, which is probably part of the problem, probably
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason they lost. There was no clear leader, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
yeah, there's the next one, right? So, well, first of all, a massive realignment culturally and politically will happen. So, yeah, it's a massive realignment that this black and brown young men, first time voters, was one of the factors that changed, and that the messaging from the Biden Harris, or whatever you want to call it, just didn't connect with them. They felt they were left out, and now we have a new generation of young black and brown voters. I you know how I feel. I don't like these terms, black and brown. I think it's ridiculous, but it's telling, right? It's saying something that he messaged, or the Republican Party said something that resonated, and they showed up and they voted, and there's an outcome because of it.
Well, the thing that, and I appreciate that. There's so many things in each of these quotes, but a couple comments on that. One would be, I think what I saw for the last 4 years, certainly the last year, was that the black and brown young men, so to speak, but all of the Democrats and even us, the
Yes.
Republicans or conservatives, liberals, whatever you want to call them, the Democratic Party was condescending to us and to them.
Well,
They
that's exactly what one of the quotes was. Yeah,
uh,
condescending and virtual signaling.
yeah,
Did not work. Yeah.
they were treating us like children,
Mhm.
and that's a sign of being an elite member. Is you think you're better than everyone else. And I
Yeah.
think that the other thing that's one of the things I saw earlier today was this chart. And dude, you must have noticed this as well. But the whether it was AI or just technology in general, the access to data on a real time basis was astounding.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah, it
bringing
really
back
was.
they were bringing back data subcategories of this, like one-legged, half black men between the ages of 35 and 37 that lived in Louisiana voted this way for. It was crazy, right? But what I ended up seeing when they put the percentages of the people that voted for Donald Trump, it was perhaps one of the most diverse populations I've ever seen. And
Yeah.
the irony is they're supposed to be the diversity team and we're supposed to be the prejudicial racial team, when in fact, in reality, the opposite was what actually fell out.
The complete opposite. And this goes back to, again, we're going to run with the elitism thing in a bit, but let's just go back to your point before too. The so-called political experts, they all got it wrong again for the third time.
Yep.
So that's what they said. This is a new dawn of a political shift that is going on, and things have really changed, particularly when you talk about the media and the impact that a Joe Rogan podcast could have had on this, right? Or that we have really shifted from this traditional way that no longer applies, and that's a good thing. Again, it's not what happens to you in life, it's how you respond to what happens to you in life. And this particular Democratic expert was saying this in a positive way. Hey, this is a wake-up call. This that the Democratic Party had really needs to regroup and see what happened here, and there'll be a better party because of it. So you hear me say, it's not what happens to us, it's how do we respond to what happens to us, which makes us as a country better, because everybody feels they're engaged, but it also makes the other team better because now it's the time to sit back and look for ways we can approve or really serve the American people. Otherwise, you will be eliminated from office.
That's good. That's a good lesson to have learned as collective, as a society.
Yeah, that's my gratitude thing.
I think another thing to take away from me is this whole idea. Well, there's so many different components of that. I think the being condescended to, the elitism thing, all these other. I think self-reflection is a great choice upon failing something or succeeding in something. And in my experience, succeeding, I'm less likely to self-reflect. I'm more likely to celebrate. And that's just an admission by me. When I fail lately, I'm very interested in the self-reflection component, because I'm so interested in learning and not wallowing in my failure. Like, what did I do? What could I have done differently? And to your point, I hope everybody on both sides, at least to some extent, their first reaction to this result is self-reflection. I think that's healthy.
Yeah. But the defeat thing, and I've had my fair share of them. They don't feel good. I don't like them, but I always try to make a conscious decision. Hey, what doesn't break me will make me. And another quote I like a lot is that don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. So it's painful, but it's also a time of reflection and growth, where you do have to regroup and go, I didn't get that right. The messaging or something wasn't right. So you're trying not to look at it as a complete defeat, because you don't want to lose all your confidence, but a little bit of humility, word you used earlier, may be necessary if you really care to go to this next place. In the end, you'll be better of it. But here's just stay on this, and then we'll move on to the elitism map I put together. But this again, this is not me speaking. This is an evaluation of the blue team evaluating themselves, and they came out and they just said it. Hey, the Harris Biden Democratic Party over the last 4 years, and really you could say the last 40 years, if you think about it, right? They've been in power. And here's the 5 items: the Green New Deal, and every one of these was positioned as spending. So massive government spending, and then again 1, 2, 3. So the Green New Deal, energy costs, and spending. How much money was spent to force this new Green New Deal? And clearly the American people said, hey, we don't feel that's the best place to spend our money, because it is our money as taxpayers. So that was number one as far as their spending.
Well, let me respond to that real quick before we go on to number 2. I think the other things that strike me about the Green New Deal is the math never made sense. Never, ever. Nope. 2 + 2 never equaled 4. And we never took the time to say, if we do this, if we move in this direction and spend this money, what's going to happen in 2, 3, 4, and 5 years down the road? Nobody did any future planning like any significant business that starts up does. They do a business plan, then they project out to 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
Nobody ever projected anything. They just presumed.
They just started spending. Yeah. Stay with that. Stay with me on this, Mark, because you're right where the conversation I'm trying to have, right? Because it all ties back to spending. If you're going to spend money, you should at least take the time to understand what the true costs are and what the ROI, what's the return on the investment over time. Well, clearly that the Green New Deal wasn't working out. And now, there's a new political dawn. So number 2, major crime and homelessness spending. Now, again, I'll go straight to California, because if you look how much money this governor has spent on homelessness, it's embarrassing how much money has been wasted on homelessness. Yet the problem continues to grow, and you see it every single day you drive down the street in particular areas, San Francisco and Oakland particularly.
You know what I think, Jim, and it's so interesting. Part of our fun is that I live in Florida and you live in California, and there's such a contrast to so many things. But didn't you tell me, weren't you the one that told me that you guys spent like $12 million on an outside toilet one time or something? Wasn't that?
I think that was in mainstream media, but no, the amount of waste, Mark, is it's not even funny. It's very sad.
Well, here's a distinction that I would make in the spirit of spending, right? It's one thing to spend. It's another thing to invest, right? Yeah. And in order to invest,
and that's government's job, right? We have to invest in infrastructure.
In order to invest, you have to have projections and expectations and caveats and discovery clauses and contracts. These people just started throwing money at green shit, and nobody did any of this diligence, right? So spending is different than investing. We're not investing yet in stuff, and I think we'll start now.
But it's the same people that have been in power have been throwing money at the same problem for 10, 20, sometimes 30 years. And we don't get the change. Results don't change at all. But yet, we'll move on to the next one. But again, this is not me speaking. This is
I think what's happened, Jim, is we've just held them accountable, and we'll see what happens now.
This is my gratitude thing. I think the system is working. It's holding people accountable. So number 3, secure border and immigration spending. It's how much does it cost us to house these families because of an unsecured border and a immigration policy? Sure, that needs to be fixed, but this president, this administration clearly pulled back when they first became elected, and the amount of spending that it's going to cost us to house these families is really could have been one of the major decisions of why people didn't vote for the blue team again. And
well, not only did we spend on non-citizens, and that's a nuanced kind of thing that on its face doesn't make any sense. but that money was not able to be invested in our own homeless veterans, homeless people, lower
Yep.
class people in need of resources, our educational
No,
system,
super important what you're
our
saying.
healthcare system. This
Yeah.
thing has all kinds of ripple effects. It's not just the
Yeah.
spending that we're
Yeah.
wasting, it's the lack of investment we're left with for our
No, you make a
people
really
and
good
our
point.
shit.
All those funds have to get reallocated
Yep.
to things that could have been in our schools. They could have been, like you said, in our veterans and all these other things. That doesn't happen. So it's a really good point. Number four, three major wars and conflicts. The spending that we're spending on the Ukraine, the spending that we're dealing with Iran and Israel, it's crazy that we're sending all that money to those countries when they could have been in our own schools. You know, it's back to what you're saying, right? The reallocation of funds and the debt that we're driving up because of these wars.
Dude,
And
look, we left $85 billion worth of military equipment in Afghanistan.
that was what month one
Yeah.
of the Biden Harris administration or day one?
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, that's
the repercussions of that, the how completely and utterly irresponsible that was, and irresponsible is a kind word, but it wasn't just the 85 billion or $80 billion. It was that those weapons and military equipment are now in the hands of our arch
Mark.
enemies,
We can go on and
right?
on. Like you said, this is not me talking. Again, this is the one of the leaders of their own team. So, number five, um, abortion, transgender, LBGT, and DEI initiative spending. They really probably could have won this thing on abortion alone. Had some of these younger voters didn't come out and there not been more engagement, but they clearly had. If you look at the final results, um, women voters, you know, this is a very emotional topic to them about abortion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then so was transgender and LBGT and all those things. But you know, when you start to push these laws down into our elementary schools or in our junior high schools, where you can do sex changes and do for that's expensive. There's spending, there's money that's going out, and it's not just the spending of money. It's the energy, like you were saying. It's the distraction from maybe what else they should be doing in these schools. So I
Well,
just thought
here's what I saw there, and I saw it a couple times late night and the wee hours of the morning. There were three main concerns for the American population. It wasn't a
Mhm.
blue team, red team distinction. It was the country.
Yeah,
And what they did to themselves was they allowed the economy and the border to gain such
yeah,
attention, negative attention, that abortion became number three and it was down to 11%. So they
hmm,
beat themselves, they kicked themselves in
yeah,
the ass, right?
yeah.
Like abortion wasn't big enough an issue for them to run on abortion this time.
Hmm.
They kicked themselves in the ass.
Yeah. Again, I appreciated what this guy was saying, and they're saying, hey, we're going to regroup. We got to rethink these things and come back. So, but so then I moved on. I think it was a different channel, but this one I found really interesting. And again, this is all third party, um, um, different channel, different evaluator of the loss that they took. He said um, the problem with the Democratic Party is that um, we've become almost missionaries. They feel like they have these missions, and it's part of being. It's a form of elitism, which I really find interesting because the word elitism, you know, you don't hear it thrown around very often. But when when it's thrown out on what they're in their own party and reflecting on how their elitism could have been the reason that they not could have been, it was the reason that they lost this election. So then I started breaking it down. Well, what is elitism? And he broke it down actually. He says, well, there's five types of elitism. There's political elitism, there's Hollywood elitism, there's educational elitism, there's media elitism, and there's even Silicon Valley tech, and global and Wall Street elitism. So we
Hmm.
started breaking these down, and yeah, let's talk about this. And before I'll set it up too, one of my favorite quotes is, "You can't kill a thought; it has to die of old age or natural causes."
It's a great thought. It's a great quote.
Yeah, and what it is, it's actually a book. Yeah, well, it's been quoted in a couple books, but the way I understand that is, you can't kill a thought. That if you go and it's a war term, right? If you have a group of people and they think a certain way, and you go kill them all, the thought doesn't go away.
Right.
If
Right.
anything, you actually can make the problem worse by trying to
Right.
kill somebody. So
Hmm.
so that's the physical part of it. You also can't kill it in the mind of somebody. The more you try to kill it, what you try to annihilate, you create. So the
Yeah.
more that you try to kill it, the worse it gets. And
Yeah. That's interesting. That's
it's an
interesting.
interesting thing, but hear me out. The other thing is, I added the part to it, you can't kill a thought. It must not die of natural causes. Well, natural causes is exactly what happened yesterday. Natural causes was a group of people that said, I don't believe what you're saying. I'm not buying what you're selling. And that's what happened. The
Anymore. Yeah.
Anymore. Yeah. So,
Anymore.
so,
Yeah.
so, yeah. And then another one that fits in that quote is, we kill our leaders, be worth being killed. So I like that quote, because anytime you're in a position of leadership, the human nature is eventually we go to kill our leaders, not physically. I'm talking about politically or whatever else. And
Yeah.
most of these, in fairness to these issues, were started off with very good intentions, right? There was I don't believe there was like a, a negative intent. I think they were probably, especially liberalism and fairness, was with good intentions to help people that go bad.
Well, yeah, I mean the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I'm not sure whose that quote is, but it's a damn good one. I think the elitism thing is huge. And I think that one of the things that I always took offense to, and I took personal offense to it, was how condescending the Democratic
Yeah.
Party was in their public speeches,
Mhm.
in their admonitions to certain groups, in their articles, in their videos. It was like, you literally think I'm a child or I'm an
Yeah.
idiot. And that gets that
That's
over a period of time, people who are not idiots and not
yeah.
puppets begin to stand up and say, fuck that. I'm not taking that shit
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And
But that's a
and
form of elitism. The
it
way he
is.
described it is, it's also that the Democrats have taken this missionary position, this mission driven position, like they're going to speak for all these groups, and they're on a mission to save the world. And guess what? It didn't work. It's not working anymore. So yeah. So let's break this down, Mark. Let's have some fun with this and get some kicks out of it. So what I started to do was like, okay, this political um elitism, and obviously we're going to talk about the Democratic Party because they're on the losing team. And then I started to say, well, who is that, right? Let's put a face to the name and a name to the face. And then I even went one step further about, you can't kill a thought; it has to die of old age or natural causes. So here's a
Mhm.
couple I threw out there, and let's have some fun and laugh about it. But number one, of course, my favorite person in politics, Nancy Pelosi, 84 years old, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
office for, it feels like 84 years, but clearly in a position in California of every bit of 40, and has changed the entire political landscape as we ever knew it. She was the leader of this for the last 30, 40 years. So yeah, that's my first one, is Nancy Pelosi, 84 years old. Of course, right next to her, Joe Biden, 81 years old, right? Next to that, I put Elizabeth Warren up there, 75 years old. Bernie Sanders, 83 years old. And then, you got to throw like a Anthony Fauci at 83 years on there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
those are just the ones I came up with, because it's over. They're gone.
It's going to be interesting to me, and you and I kind of had a slight disagreement on this. I believe they are gone. I just wonder how long it's going to take. And I think we both agreed that none of them are going to be held
Mark,
accountable.
she's 84 years old. You think she's going to make a comeback at 84? I'm talking about old age or natural causes. It goes back to the quote.
Yeah.
You can't kill a thought. It has to die of old age or natural
Yeah.
causes. In this
Hey
case, I think
man,
it's both.
I'm as a Christian man, I'm not going to want to wish to expedite her demise, but yeah, we don't have to wait too long.
I don't think it's, I'm not expediting her demise. We only have so many years on the planet, and we're only, useful or functional to a certain point.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
sorry.
that
I don't believe we should have age limits on politicians. We should not have an 84-year-old woman or man making decisions for generations for American citizens that are, or for the world that are 30, 40, it's not fair. It's not fair. They should not be
well,
in
I
power
think
at
it's
that.
I'm reticent to use the word fair, but I understand your point and I agree with you in concept. I'm more of a fan for maybe cognitive testing.
Yeah,
Um,
I appreciate you saying that.
you
I
know,
should have said that. I think
Well, I
if
think that
yes,
we're all getting technology and medical and healthcare, and we're all, 60s now, 70s now. It's like
100%.
my
You're
dad's
right. If
96. So it's like, yeah, but something needs to be done. They can't be
yeah,
unfettered, unjudged,
thank you, Mark.
unquestioned.
If you're capable at that age, then absolutely, and
Go
you're
for it.
contributing, go
Right.
for it. So,
Right. Right. But you got to
but you
prove you.
can't say that about Joe Biden, and I think that's what he was saying. Look at you pushed that guy out there, and you lied to everybody and said he was okay, and he wasn't.
Yeah, and
And
then you
then
turn around and talk about Donald Trump losing his faculties. Are you out of your
yeah,
mind? You
yeah,
know?
yeah, no, and you're right. Donald Trump's 80 years old, so it's not that he's in that. So anyway, that you got, and then you're gonna do the following, right? Kamala Harris, she was the face of the future. She was the one, and again, we're about the same age, so I get it. They were gonna say, hey, this is the future of America. Well, it didn't
Hey
work.
man, at least she finally got a few votes.
Yeah. And then Gavin Newsom, right? They had him lined up to take that spot, but
Oh
for
man,
whatever
he should.
reason, they didn't put him in there. They put her in.
Well, it's interesting that you bring him up because I was talking about, my daughter was yesterday. We're talking about this, and she was talking about why do the same people that are ineffectual continue to get elected? And I said to her, I said, I was talking to my friend Jim a couple months ago, and I said to him because he lives in California, I'm talking about you, and she knows of you obviously because I talk
Yeah.
about you a lot. And I said to my friend Jim, how the hell does Gavin Newsom keep getting elected? And you didn't hesitate. You're like, money. They have a shitload of money. That's what it is. And I'm like, well,
Well,
that's,
no. Hold on. Money, but where'd the money come from? Nancy Pelosi, his
yeah,
aunt. That's
yeah,
that's how he. That's how.
yeah, yeah.
It's an
Well, I mean,
oligarchy. This is nothing about. It's so funny about this. It's everything they accuse Trump of doing or being, they were
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Everything, the
yeah,
democracy, everything
yeah.
else, and I think we all do that. That's a human thing. We often project our own
Sure, sure.
dislikes of
That's
ourselves
been,
on other people,
yeah. Well,
and
the
clearly that
thing,
did not work in this
but
case.
my point is, and I think it's deserving of consideration, perhaps not in this format, but at some other time, is what is the root cause of all these things? And I think that we spend a lot of time as Americans, as humans, as people, dealing with symptomatic things. Well, like band-aids instead of healing the wound. It's like, well,
Mhm.
what's causing the wound, right? If it's the politics, the structure of, say, lobbyists, right? Or the election process or fundraising, for some reason, money gets people into office, not credentials. And I'm not ignorant.
Yeah, and
I'm
that's
not,
on
yeah,
both the
I'm,
red team and the blue
I
team.
am not
So
naive, but I think that attention needs to be spent on where is all this money coming from and what's legitimate and what's not, because money is cause. I mean, Adam Schiff got reelected too. Like, what the fuck, you know? So
all right,
it's there's a root problem there, and it's deeper
but
than
that root
just
problem is
money.
equal on both sides of the aisle
I'm not
on both
suggesting
teams.
it isn't,
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
suggesting it
All right.
isn't.
Let's
It's
move
my
on to
favorite.
number two, Hollywood elitism.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
This is another, again, he's criticized his own party. Like they went out and they got some big names. And here they are. Robert De Niro, George Clooney, Beyonce. Uh, you mentioned John Legend, Joy Behar. Uh, these are
Oprah,
all.
Bruce Springsteen.
It just goes on and on, right? It didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It did not work.
Well,
If
it's
anything, it
funny.
probably lost credibility
Of
because
course.
how do those people relate to the average guy?
Yeah. None of those people are impacted by inflation or the border. None of them.
Hmm. Hmm.
So here's a funny aside. I'm on LinkedIn the other day, and somebody posted something about George Bush's daughter. I think her name was Jenna or Gemma. She
Hmm.
was in the news years ago,
Yeah, I
partying and
remember. Yeah,
drinking and doing coke and shit. And somebody said, "Well, so Jenna Bush just came out and said blah 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 blah. Any thoughts?" And my response on LinkedIn was, "Yeah, who gives a shit?" comes to mind. And then somebody else posted, well, what else has she done? And I posted cocaine question mark. You
yeah,
know, that's the point. That's like, who gives a shit what these people say? They're
yeah,
entitled to their opinion. But if you
yeah,
think you can pump a bunch of these celebrities getting off their private jets and their
yeah,
private yachts and put them on stage and have them sing for me, and that makes me want to vote for her, then you definitely are condescending to me. You definitely think I'm a moron, right?
yeah,
That's not
yeah,
obvious. Give me a
yeah.
fucking
Well,
break.
it clearly didn't work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
It,
God.
yeah, yeah. You could say what you want about again, I try not to use any names because it just changes the whole dynamics. But at least with the red team rallies, they didn't have to hire artists and performers to get people to show up.
No, no.
There's a contrast, huge contrast of how they went about gathering support, and clearly didn't work. So okay, that was number three, uh, educational elitism. So here's a couple names for you. Claudine Gay, Harvard, former Harvard president, as an example.
Former being the
Former,
operative word.
yeah, yeah. It can go on. Who's Randy Weingartner? Gardner?
Weingarten, yeah, she's the National Teachers Association head, and she's as corrupt as they come. I think the elitism that to me is coming from the educational system, and thank God my kids are out of school by now, is they're not doing things in the best interest of students. They're doing things in the best interest of politicians and the teachers union, and they're perpetuating a degradation of our educational system is what they're doing, you
Mhm.
know and
Yeah,
whether
their
they
agenda became more important than
than the
what was
kids.
best than the kids.
Yep.
And again, I just use Claudine Gay because she was in the news a few months ago and she eventually resigned. But she's an example of what's happened, right? That to even our highest levels of education, and right on down to elementary school and so on. So
Yeah, what's interesting, Jim, and I know that we got to kind of wrap up here in a sec, but when I was a kid, I remember there were a couple guys in town. They played tennis with my dad on a regular basis, and they were quote unquote PhDs at Harvard and at Tufts. There's a lot of great schools in Boston. And I used to look up to that. That used to mean something that was worthy of admiration and accomplishment. And now it makes me think, well, you're just an idiot. If you have a PhD, then you're a moron. And it's like that might not be true, but that's how I feel now. And that's not how I felt when I was a kid. So I mean, there's
yeah,
something to be said for that too. You know.
yeah, yeah.
It,
Well, anybody that commits to getting a PhD in anything is to be respected and admired, right? What you do with it is another thing, and where you got it from or what is different. So, but anyway, let's move on to number four: mainstream media elitism. Doesn't even have to be mainstream. I think the reflection was that this media as we know it has changed, and it was proven by the power of the podcast of Joe Rogan and on both sides, right? Even Kamala Harris went on podcasts, but traditional media elitism is simply not working. And here's some of the names: Rachel Maddow, again, one of your favorites.
I'll
Another
bite my
claim to fame,
tongue.
by the way. She grew up also in Castro Valley, which is the city right next to Hayward, where I grew up, and so she's and went to Stanford. And so yeah, a little background on her. Joe Scarborough, is that how you say it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's the show he has? That's Morning Joe.
Morning Joe. Yeah. With his wife, Mika Brzezinski, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
They're a dodo clan. I mean, the media is like I don't think the media has been news in many, many years. And to me, the thing that is most apparent to me is if you take a position and you're not at all interested in listening to the person with the opposing position and having civil discourse with that person, then you're no longer a media outlet. You're a talk show,
yeah,
and that's fine. Just call
yeah.
yourself a talk show, you know?
Right, right. Look, the other Fox News is really no different on the other side of that too. So let's balance that out. But you're right. It's not journalism any longer. It's it's changed, and maybe now it's time to start to address some of that. So another couple other names. Don Lemon, I think he's another good example. Brian Sletcher,
Seltzer.
Seltzer, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are the talking heads that tried to convince the majority of the American population that what they're selling, they didn't. The American people just didn't buy. It's
Yeah, I think it's a great conversation, Jim. I think to kind of wrap up, I think we can. My inclination is to go back to where we began, and that is, and not that anybody needs my advice on anything, but it's like, I'm not going to be gloating. I'm not going to be celebrating. I'm not going to be. I don't see any value in that. I think the self-reflection thing is really wise. It's a great call on your part. And I think self-reflection should, and then wait for context. We never wait for context. We always say, this is what this is, and I know what it is because that's what it is right now. Well,
yeah,
wait a couple weeks, wait a couple months, wait a couple days, whatever it is. Context needs to come in,
yeah.
and
Let me finish these last two, and we'll wrap up. So
okay,
the last one was, again, this is not me. This is somebody else describing what went wrong. Uh, Silicon Valley elitism. So I don't have a name or a face on this one, but it was clear that Google, Apple, even Twitter, when it was Twitter, had influenced the outcomes of some elections because of a political ideology that they felt they could either control or a narrative. I think it's fair to say that they were in on it, especially in the last
yeah, I,
election.
I think I think to put a face and a name to it, I think Zuckerberg came out months ago and said, yes, we in fact were asked by the FBI
Yeah.
to suppress this information, and then more
Yes.
recently, Jeff Bezos said the Washington Post, the paper that I own, is not going to support either candidate or endorse either candidate, and
That's right.
supposedly they lost 200,000 subscribers. Now you can read a lot into both of those things, but were they in on it? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
How about
yeah.
the Twitter, when before Elon Musk purchased Twitter,
Yeah. My
and
favorite
the
part
Hunter
about that is,
laptop story that completely buried, and that was an inside job with Twitter. They proved it completely,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Matt,
yeah.
yeah.
That
And then the last one, I think it's worth saying, because this, like I said, this is a ripple effect that goes way beyond the United States of America because of this red wave, and it is a global thing. And there, I think it's fair to say that the Democratic Party and the Europe global elitist, uh, had an agenda. They had a world view of how they wanted things to be, and that elitism isn't working. And the name that was mentioned was even like a Larry Fink from the BlackRock CEO, right?
mhm.
His pushing DEI on all the companies and his agenda. Well, that
Yeah.
that didn't work out so well. And the other one that comes up is Davos. Was it Klaus Schwab? Is his name?
Klaus Schwab.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the World
Klaus.
Economic Forum.
Yeah, he even
86-year-old president recently resigned, but yeah, it's not just the
yeah.
U.S.
No,
There's
you got
other.
the World Health Organization, you got NATO,
Mhm.
you got all these global places. They wanted to bring us down so they could lift themselves up, and everybody was going to be kind of corralled into being kind of told what
See,
to
Mark,
do.
I don't know if that's completely fair. I think that everybody starts off with good intentions and what they feel is the best for the country,
I
and
agree.
and,
I
and I
agree.
don't think it's all um, with bad intentions. I think a lot of it is with good intentions based on people. But this goes back to, you can't kill a thought. It has to die of old age or natural causes. That, Klaus Schwab was 86 years old. It's time. It's a new dawn. It is time to go to this next place, wherever it is. And
Yeah,
this is,
I don't disagree with you about the good intentions at the inception of any of these initiatives. But to your point, it's like they've been around for 40, 50, 60 years now. It's like those intentions have been gone for a long time.
thank you.
People get power and they get control, and it infects them because it
Yes.
infects most of us. And these things need to be curtailed now. And I think we're in a very unique position. And like I said earlier to you, Jim, I saw like 5 world leaders, from Benjamin Netanyahu to Macron to different places where we had various and different degrees of partnership with these countries. And the overriding theme was, well, Donald Trump's the president again, so we have to say that we're looking forward to doing business with him again.
How about the markets, huh? Wow, I haven't
Yeah,
followed them completely, but man, they responded positively.
yeah,
So
yeah.
America's a machine. It really is, and nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, but clearly we are on a new path as of.
I am very happy with our fortitude and the system working, and I'm very, very happy with that. And I think that I'm going to spend the next few days getting back to work, and then maybe step back and reflect a little more. And we'll talk again next Wednesday.
All right. Until then,
Thanks, Jim.
thank you.